This is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Shelf of Many Things, where I take a look at some indie and small press role-playing games and accessories. I'm going to take a little bit of a break from recovering retro clone systems this week to take a look at an adventure. This is actually one of a series from Dark Wizard Games called Maximum Mayhem Dungeons. They seem to be a series of OSR adventures in an old-school format that tend towards the over-the-top gonzo fantasy stylings. It appears as though they are based on OSRIC system, but there are guidelines for converting them to 5th edition available separately. They often have quick Kickstarters to launch each new one of which just completed successfully as of this recording, so if this sort of adventure is your thing, do keep your eye out for those. Now, I was given the opportunity to get a review copy of one of the modules, and since there are now several of them out, I of course decided to go with the first one. Maximum Mayhem Dungeons number 1, Hanging Coffins of the Vampire Queen, by Mark Tarmino. I'm not sure how closely the others in the series follow the writing style and presentation, so bear that in mind. Oftentimes, these sorts of series adapt to shore up weak points over time, so it's entirely possible that anything that I have a criticism of over here on this one may have been corrected in the later ones. Hanging Coffins of the Vampire Queen is available as a PDF through DriveThruRPG and as a softcover hard copy and PDF through Dark Wizard Games Site Direct, if you prefer physical versions. There is also a box set that includes the first 6 Maximum Mayhem Dungeons physical releases, plus some dice. As I have the PDF, this review will proceed from that. The PDF package I picked up included the main PDF of the adventure, a PDF with themed character sheets, a couple of images of the Vampire Queen herself, and a high-res poster image of the cover of the module. We'll just focus on the main adventure PDF. The main adventure PDF consists of 40 pages with a full-color front and back cover with cover art, the front by Jeff D. and the back by Brian McCraney. A 2-page blue scale map of the dungeon done in 10-foot per square scale, reminiscent of the first edition era maps. Interior pages are in black and white, largely with 2-column text with encounter headings bolded, read aloud text set out in boxes, and the occasional full page or smaller inline illustrations in black and white by a variety of other artists. In terms of format at least, Hanging Coffins of the Vampire Queen duplicates the feel of late first edition modules at their cleanest. Hanging Coffins of the Vampire Queen is an OSRIC-compatible adventure for 8 to 10 characters of levels 10 to 14. It has specific class recommendations for party composition to provide redundancy and survivability to the party at large. Due to the plotline involved, the party is not assumed to be heroes, opening the door for a variety of alignments and personality types. They will basically be kept together by the need to survive. The adventure is primarily a dungeon crawl. There is some plot behind it and shown throughout, but it's fundamentally a survival-style crawl in which the characters are railroaded in and expected to escape only by their sheer might and cooperation. As such, I'll cover the setup in brief here, pretty much what the players learn as soon as they are tossed into the adventure. It starts with a party already captives of the evil vampire queen Lady Kneeblack. For her own amusement and other purposes, she summons them up and gives them their gear back, then drops them into the depths of her dungeon with a very limited time to actually re-equip themselves before they're plunged directly into the action. The presumption, of course, is that the party is going to fight their way back to the Vampire Queen, slay her, and then escape, or die trying. The adventure starts with a brief background for the GM, followed by a series of randomized pit traps for when the party falls into one of the many pit traps on the map. There's a rumor table which allows for scraps of information the party may have overheard during their captivity. There's a random encounter table that mostly consists of summonable demons to plug in as necessary and as called for in the text within the adventure. Then there's the player background itself, consisting of a boxed text cutscene style introduction, which allows for minimal interaction before the bulk of the book begins with the dungeon key. Each room section consists of a numbered heading in bold, a boxed read-aloud description of the encounter, a non-boxed list of GM text to describe how the room unfolds, any treasure present, and any magic items and enemies in bold. Enemies are given full stat blocks, and most are taken from either the OSRIC core rules or from a selection of monsters in the rear of the book. After the bulk of the book describing the rooms in the dungeon, there's a section of new monsters, which includes not only entirely new monsters, but a number of reasonably legally distinct clones of classic monsters. There's a new weapon to be found in the dungeon, and it is described after the monsters, and then a number of pre-generated characters for use either as player characters if the adventure is being run as a standalone one-shot, or as NPCs that can be recovered in various places in the dungeon. An ad for other Maximum Mayhem dungeons and the necessary OGL legal text wraps up the book. There are 52 encounter areas with a variety of setups, from the absolutely silly to the deadly to the downright unfair. I'm not going to go into each one individually, but I will say that there's a decent mix of some rather memorable rooms, some really over-the-top stuff, such as a vampire lich, an evil cook in a room full of gore with a magic cupcake, and even a room that's an homage to the cover of the original AD&D 1st Edition Player's Handbook, with the adventurers near the statue to Moloch. Some of the encounters really are decently inventive, although I will say that although the module is listed as suited for mature audiences, it really means that in the most immature way. The dungeon itself is liberally sprinkled with gratuitous gore, violence, and nudity, occasionally reflected in the illustrations, but quite frankly, there's nothing really wrong with that. After all, if you're looking for anything but an over-the-top hack-and-slash fun-fest, then you probably wouldn't be playing an adventure called Hanging Coffins of the Vampire Queen in the first place. I will say that in terms of balance, at least from an old-school perspective, some of the encounters do seem a bit on the more difficult end, at least numerically, but nothing really seems to be completely out of place. The treasure to be found in the dungeon is quite generous indeed, although I'm not entirely sure how much of that will benefit a party, since they'll have to actually transport it through the dungeon and out of the dungeon to, retain it. In terms of presentation, the module itself is appealing in terms of art, design, and layout. The interior illustrations are wonderful, as is the cover art, and the text is clearly presented and easy to read. In terms of the writing, well, that's my main problem with the adventure. And I don't mean the writing in terms of the plot or the setup of the encounters, but rather the writing style used and the mechanics behind it. I don't know if it's been addressed in the later modules, but Hanging Coffins of the Vampire Queen uses an almost grating style of very active, direct address in terms of the box text descriptions and in the GM-related text. It's almost a bit of stream of thought-related style that incorporates table instructions directly into the writing that you wouldn't usually see in a module. There's also some rooms where instructions are repeated unnecessarily, which I think is more an oversight in editing, and even the few places where some things were obviously left out, but you can be worked around pretty easily on those. Now, the read-aloud text can be easily paraphrased. That's not an issue. I mean, I prefer a different style myself. I can probably paraphrase pretty much everything in this just on the fly. I generally try to do that anyway. Even the problems with the GM text can be dealt with a little examination. You can go ahead and determine what the meaning was, besides just reading it like a program. I believe the actual contents of the module and the presentation it takes are top-notch otherwise, and even at the price listed, the module is well worth it in my opinion, and would provide an old-school table at least a couple sessions of good hack-and-slash fun. The best constructive criticism I can give the developer is to find someone just to be a copy editor. And I don't mean a proofreader, but someone who can go through and make sure that things flow easily when you're reading them, and make sure there's no repetition or draft errors or crossover between box text and GM text, that kind of thing. And they may very well have done so in later modules in the series. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. I'll put links to where you can buy it in the description below, and I may have to take a look at other of Dark Wizard Games stuff. It honestly has that sort of weird fantasy old school vibe that I kind of enjoy. So for now, this has been the RPG Crawler with Maximum Mayhem Dungeons #1, Hanging Coffins of the Vampire Queen. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care and goodbye. And if you're still watching this far, I'd like to take a moment to thank those who have supported this channel via Patreon or direct donations throughout the years, without which this channel could not have lasted as long as it has. For those who are feeling particularly generous, you can still support my work through Patreon and now through Subscribestar as well, through the links in the description below.